The Christmas lights cast a festive glow on the dining table, but the mood shattered when my daughter threw a glass of wine right at me. She did it in front of the children, our relatives, and all our guests. Her anger exploded right in the middle of our family toasts, instantly destroying the peaceful holiday we were trying to create. The look of utter shock that crossed her face when I permanently removed her from my will was unforgettable. Yet for me, that was just the very beginning. I wasn't going to stop there. Honestly, it was already far too late to turn back. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you are listening in the comments. I stood at the head of the dinner table, the wine glass trembling slightly in my hand as I prepared to make my toast. It was Christmas Eve, 2023. The turkey looked perfect, gleaming golden beneath the chandelier. Candles flickered softly, and my best white dress shirt felt crisp and neat. Everything was just the way my late wife, Margaret, would have wanted it. To family, I began lifting my glass toward my daughter, Caitlin, her husband, Andrew, and their children, to remembering those we've lost and to cherishing. Caitlin's bitter laugh cut through my words like the sound of glass breaking. Stop this hypocrisy. Her voice was raw, cracking with the 5 years of stored-up rage she'd carried since her mother's funeral. You deserve this. The red wine seemed to move in slow motion, arcing through the air and catching the light. The burgundy liquid splashed across my face, soaking my collar and dripping down my chin onto the clean, white tablecloth. The silence that followed was deafening, a vacuum where celebration had been. My granddaughter, Emma, started crying. My 8-year-old grandson, Jake, ducked behind his father's chair. Our neighbors, the Wilsons, froze with their forks halfway to their mouths. Aunt Mary dropped her napkin in surprise. I stood perfectly still, the wine dripping off me. My analytical engineer's mind was automatically cataloging everything. The wine's temperature, the exact pattern of the spray on my shirt, the precise path the glass had taken from Caitlin's hand. I was 42 years old, and my daughter had just thrown wine in my face at Christmas dinner. Caitlin, stop, Andrew whispered. The children are watching. But his voice held no real authority. She wasn't done. Rising from her chair, Caitlin's face was contorted with the bitterness that had been growing inside her since Margaret's funeral. 5 years, Dad. 5 years I've begged you for help with my credit cards, and you buy the kids cheap plastic toys from the dollar store instead. The Wilsons started gathering their coats with awkward speed. We should probably go, Mrs. Wilson mumbled, avoiding eye contact. Those aren't cheap toys, I said quietly, wiping the wine from my chin. I chose each one carefully. Carefully cheap. Caitlin's voice rose higher. You sit here in this huge house, hoarding Mom's life insurance money, and your grandson gets garbage. Aunt Mary tried to calm things down. Caitlin, honey, this is not the time or place. When is the time, Aunt Mary? When he's dead and it's too late? Caitlin grabbed the gift I'd wrapped for Jake, a model airplane kit I had spent hours selecting. Look at this. $20 junk, while he's worth $500,000. Andrew tugged at her arm. Please, let's just go home and discuss this later. But I was studying my daughter's face. For the first time in years, I saw the clear calculation behind her rage. The fact that she'd arrived empty-handed but still expected expensive gifts, the way she had criticized every single thing, the wine, the china, the dinner I had cooked all by myself. Emma sobbed, even louder. Mommy, stop yelling at Grandpa. Your grandfather doesn't care about us, Caitlin snapped, ripping open Jake's present. See this plane? This is what 48 years of being his daughter gets you. Scraps. The model plane scattered across the floor in pieces. Jake whimpered. I bent down to collect the broken parts. My movements were slow, deliberate, and utterly calm. When I straightened up, every eye in the room was fixed on me. The wine stain spread across my chest like a dark map of betrayal. Thank you, Caitlin, I said, my voice as steady as bedrock. Thank you for showing me your true face. She hesitated for a moment, perhaps hearing something new in my tone, but her momentum pulled her forward. My true face? What about yours, Dad? The grieving widower act, while you sit here counting every penny. She swept Emma's gift off the table. These children deserve better than your stinginess. The neighbors had already reached the front door. I heard their car starting in the driveway. Andrew made one final attempt. Caitlin, we need to leave now. The kids are too upset. But Caitlin was building to her climax, listing every financial request I had ever turned down. Each word felt like another splash of wine, but this time I was ready. I was watching, learning, and making mental notes. My engineer's mind began calculating the possibilities for my next move. The credit card debt, Dad. $18,000 we asked you to help with last spring. Caitlin paced behind the scattered gifts, her wine glass still clutched in her trembling hand. And what did you say? Learn to budget better. I remained standing by my chair, the wine cooling against my skin, carefully processing each accusation. Behind me, Aunt Mary quietly led Emma and Jake toward the living room, but their frightened whispers still reached me. The roof repairs 2 years ago, $12,000. We practically begged. Caitlin's voice cracked with what sounded like genuine emotion, or at least a convincing performance of it. You said the bank would give us better terms than family could. Andrew stood helplessly between his wife and the door, his car keys jingling nervously. We really should go. This isn't solving anything. Solving. Caitlin whirled on him. Nothing gets solved because he sits in his fortress, counting Mom's money while his own family struggles. The accusation about Margaret's life insurance hit me differently than the others. I felt a cold, clear, analytical shift inside my chest. Your mother's life insurance, I repeated slowly, paid for Emma's medical bills when she was born. You know this. Some of it. What about the rest? Caitlin gestured wildly at the house. This house, the renovations, your precious workshop in the basement. Meanwhile, Jake needs tutoring we can't afford. From the living room, I heard Emma sniffling and Jake asking why Mommy was so angry at Grandpa. Aunt Mary's gentle answers couldn't hide their confusion. I walked toward the fireplace, stepping over scattered wrapping paper, the wine stains marking my path across the carpet. Each step was measured, deliberate. The tutoring you mentioned in October? I asked, yes. And you said, I said I'd pay for it directly. I called 3 services and left messages with your school counselor. You never followed up. Caitlin's momentum finally faltered. That's not. We were waiting for the right program. Andrew cleared his throat. Maybe we were looking at other options first. Other options? I turned from the fireplace, and something in my expression made both of them step back. Or other sources of money? The room went silent, broken only by the grandfather clock's steady tick and the children's whispers. Aunt Mary appeared in the doorway, her coat on, holding Jake's hand. Paul, I'm taking the children home with me tonight, she announced firmly. This is not appropriate for them to witness. Aunt Mary, don't. Caitlin started to protest. No. Mary's voice held a surprising authority. You've embarrassed yourself and traumatized these babies enough. Emma, sweetie, get your coat. As my great-niece helped the children gather their things, I watched Caitlin's face cycle through anger, frustration, and perhaps a flicker of shame, but never remorse. Never regret. Fine. Caitlin slammed her wine glass onto the mantel. Take them. Let Grandpa explain why Christmas was ruined. Christmas was ruined, I said quietly, the moment you chose cruelty over gratitude. Andrew jingled his keys more frantically. Caitlin, please, let's just go home and cool off. But I was finished being patient. 5 years of hoping she would mature, of excusing her behavior because she was grieving, all of it crystallized into perfect understanding. Andrew, take your wife home. I looked him directly in the eyes. And don't bring her back. Dad. Caitlin's voice went high-pitched. You can't just... I can. I am. I straightened to my full height, wine-stained but completely unmoved. You are no longer welcome in this house. You are no longer my daughter. The silence that followed was different now. It was final. Caitlin stared at me, her mouth opening and closing wordlessly. Andrew grabbed her arm, already moving her toward the door. "You'll regret this," she whispered, and then louder, "You'll die alone in this house, counting your money, and no one will care." The front door slammed, hard enough to rattle the windows. Car doors banged shut, and tires squealed as they sped away. I stood alone in my ruined dining room, surrounded by scattered gifts and broken dreams, wine still dripping steadily onto Margaret's good carpet. The grandfather clock chimed 9 o'clock. The echo of Caitlin's departure hung in the air like smoke. I began to investigate the wreckage methodically, overturned wine glasses, torn wrapping paper, the model airplanes scattered by the hearth. Christmas dinner sat cooling on the table, untouched plates next to demolished place settings. I walked through each room with deliberate steps, documenting the destruction. In the living room, cushions were askew where Jake had hidden. The kitchen counter had wine splashes that had somehow traveled 15 feet from the dining room. Even the hallway walls showed burgundy spots. My engineer's training took over automatically. I assessed the damage, gathered evidence, and formulated a plan. From my shirt pocket, I took out my phone and began photographing everything. The wine stain on my shirt, the broken gifts, the ruined table setting. Each image was time-stamped and precise. I narrated as I worked, recording voice memos with clinical detachment. December 24th, 9:15 p.m. Subject threw approximately 4 ounces of red wine across a distance of 8 feet, demonstrating clear intent and premeditation. Destruction of gifts intended for minors. Public humiliation in the presence of neighbors and extended family. My voice sounded strange in the empty house. In my study, I opened the wall safe, hidden behind Margaret's portrait. Inside were insurance documents, the will I drafted 3 years ago, investment statements, and property deeds, everything Caitlin assumed she knew about but had never actually seen. That would have been simple, straightforward, and naive. I spread the documents across my mahogany desk, turning on the banker's lamp that had belonged to my father. Numbers tell stories if you know how to read them. Asset values, account balances, insurance entitlements. It was a lifetime of careful planning, conservative investments, and methodical savings. Margaret's life insurance had indeed been substantial, but Caitlin's accusations about hoarding were completely false. I pulled up my banking app, scrolling through 5 years of transactions. Emma's medical bills? Paid in full. Jake's daycare costs? Covered for 2 years. The roof repair Caitlin mentioned? I had transferred $12,000 to their account in March 2022. My phone buzzed. A text message from Caitlin. "Dad, I'm sorry about tonight, but you really hurt us by saying I'm not your daughter anymore. Can we talk tomorrow?" No apology for the wine. No acknowledgement of the children's trauma. No mention of the destroyed gifts or the humiliated neighbors. Just manipulation disguised as reconciliation. I screenshotted the message and added it to my evidence folder. Another text arrived. "Andrew says I should have handled it differently, but you know I'm under a lot of stress with money problems. Please don't stay mad." Still no genuine remorse. The pattern was clear now, documented and undeniable. I dialed my lawyer's office, knowing I'd reach voicemail on Christmas Eve. "Mark, this is Paul Carter. I need an urgent appointment as soon as possible after Christmas. The matter involves revising my will and cannot wait until the new year. Please call me back tonight or first thing tomorrow morning." The house felt different now, not empty, but liberated. I removed my wine-stained shirt and walked upstairs to change, leaving the evidence bagged and labeled on my desk. In the mirror, I looked older, perhaps, but not defeated. I was clarified, focused. Margaret's photograph sat on the dresser. I picked it up, studying her gentle smile, those kind eyes that had never seen Caitlin's true nature. "I'm sorry, dear," I whispered to the frame. "I should have set boundaries years ago, but I'll fix this now." Back in my study, I pulled out a yellow legal pad and began making lists, assets to protect, documentation to gather, legal strategies to research. My handwriting remained steady, methodical, and purposeful. The phone rang at 10:30 p.m. It was Mark Leans, calling back despite the late hour. "Paul, I received your message. Are you all right? You sound different." "I'm fine, Mark. Better than fine, actually. How soon can we meet? Well, tomorrow's Christmas, but I could see you Thursday morning if it's truly urgent. It is. I gestured toward the evidence spread across my desk, the photographs documenting Caitlin's assault, the text messages revealing her true priorities. We need to discuss inheritance protection strategies. My daughter has shown her hand, and I intend to respond accordingly. I see. Mark's tone grew purely professional. Bring any relevant documentation. We'll review your options comprehensively. After hanging up, I sat back in my leather chair and surveyed the transformation. 6 hours ago, I had been a lonely widower, hoping for a family reconciliation. Now, I was something else entirely. A man with purpose, armed with evidence, and absolutely clear about my objectives. The grandfather clock chimed 11 o'clock. Outside, Christmas lights twinkled peacefully in the neighbors' windows. Inside, I began planning Caitlin's education in consequences. By morning, I would need John's counsel. Christmas morning arrived gray and quiet. I drove to downtown Arlington through empty streets, my folder of printed photographs and legal documents resting on the passenger seat. The Maple Loaf Cafe glowed warm against the winter landscape, one of the few places open on the holiday. John was already waiting in our usual corner booth when I arrived, coffee steaming before him. 70 years of friendship had taught us to read each other perfectly, and his face changed immediately when he saw mine. Paul, you look like you haven't slept. My friend, John, stood up to give me a hug, then motioned for me to sit down in the booth. What's wrong? Sarah, our regular waitress, appeared with a second coffee mug. Morning, Mr. Carter. The usual breakfast? Just coffee for now, Sarah. Thank you. Once she had walked away, I methodically opened my folder. John watched with growing concern as I arranged documents across the small table. Christmas Eve didn't go as planned. I slid my phone toward him. The first photograph showed my wine-stained dress shirt in stark detail. John's kind, weathered face changed completely as he scrolled through the images. Sweet mother of... He looked up sharply. Caitlin did this in front of the children, in front of neighbors. My voice remained steady, but John knew me well enough to hear the quiet fury underneath. She threw wine directly in my face during my Christmas toast. 48 years of friendship, Paul, and I've never seen you this coldly determined. John set the phone down carefully. Tell me everything. I recounted the entire evening systematically, the build-up, the explosion, the accusations, and the aftermath. John listened without interrupting, his jaw tightening with each detail. Sarah returned to refill our cups, catching fragments of the conversation, destroyed the children's gifts, and no genuine apology afterward. She lingered longer than necessary, clearly absorbed in our story. When I finished, John leaned back against the booth's worn leather. What's your next move? From my jacket, I pulled out a green marker and my current will. John watched, fascinated, as I methodically drew a line through every mention of Caitlin Smith in the beneficiary sections. I meet with my lawyer tomorrow, I explained, continuing to mark through her name. Complete disinheritance. What about Emma and Jake? John asked, referring to their innocence in this mess. I'll establish a separate trust fund for them, accessible at age 25, with behavioral conditions attached. I capped the marker with a sharp click, but only if they demonstrate genuine respect for family. Sarah approached again, pretending to check our table, but clearly eavesdropping. More coffee, gentlemen? We're fine, thank you, John replied, waiting until she was gone. He lowered his voice. You'll need an executor you can trust completely. I was hoping you would accept that responsibility. John reached across the table, squeezing my shoulder with surprising strength. Of course I will. It's about time someone taught that girl consequences. I pulled out my legal pad, writing down my lawyer Mark Levin's contact information. The lawyer suggested a video testament explaining my reasoning. Would you witness it? Absolutely. John studied the crossed-out will with grim satisfaction. You know, I always suspected she was trouble. Margaret was too kind to see it. Margaret believed in second chances and third and fourth. I agreed. I gathered the documents back into their folder. I spent 5 years hoping Caitlin would mature. Christmas Eve proved that was naive optimism. Sarah appeared one last time, bringing our check despite our barely touched coffee. "You gentlemen have a wonderful holiday," she said with obvious curiosity, her gaze lingering on our paperwork. Outside the cafe, John walked me to my car. The December air felt sharp and clean after the stuffiness inside. "Call me after you meet with the lawyer," he instructed. "I want to know every detail of the plan." I checked my watch. 11:30 a.m. The lawyer's office opened at 2 p.m. "Actually, would you like to come along? As potential executor, you should understand the legal framework." "Wouldn't miss it." John grinned with an unexpected fierceness. "It's time your daughter learned that actions have consequences." Driving home through the quiet Christmas streets, I felt a sensation I hadn't experienced in years, the satisfaction of having a clear objective and the resources to achieve it. My phone buzzed with another text from Caitlin. "Dad, please don't stay angry. We can work this out." Still no real apology. Still no acknowledgement of the trauma she had inflicted on her own children. I deleted the message without responding. The elevator climbed steadily toward Mark Levin's 20th floor office, carrying John and me past the bustling commerce of downtown Boston. Through the glass walls, the city was busy even on the day after Christmas. Mark's secretary, Linda, greeted us with professional warmth. "Mr. Carter, Mr. Miller, please go right in. Mr. Levon is reviewing your preliminary documents now." Mark stood behind his mahogany conference table, my folder of evidence spread before him like case exhibits. At 55, he had the careful precision of someone who'd handled too many family disputes. "Paul, I've examined your photographs and timeline," he said, gesturing toward chairs facing the documents. "This level of documentation is impressive for someone without legal training." "Engineering habits," I replied, sitting across from him. "When something breaks, you analyze the failure systematically." John took the chair beside me, studying the formal atmosphere with keen interest. Mark had everything arranged with courtroom accuracy, evidence photos, text message printouts, and witness statements from Aunt Mary. "Before we proceed," Mark continued, "I need to stress that dramatic changes will often trigger legal challenges. Your daughter could claim undue influence, mental incompetence, or emotional coercion. That's why the documentation matters," I said. "Every photograph is time-stamped. Every text message is preserved. The pattern of behavior is undeniable." Mark picked up a magnifying glass, examining the wine-stained photos with professional scrutiny. "These images clearly show deliberate assault. Combined with witness statements, they establish a solid foundation for behavioral exclusion." "Behavioral exclusion?" John asked. "Massachusetts law permits disinheritance based on demonstrable mistreatment of the testator," Mark explained. "Physical assault, public humiliation, and ongoing financial manipulation all qualify as sufficient grounds." I leaned forward. "What specific language do we need?" Mark pulled out a yellow legal pad, sketching outline notes. "We'll draft a comprehensive exclusion clause, citing specific incidents with supporting documentation. The more detailed, the harder it will be to challenge. And John's role as executor is essential." Mark turned to John. "Are you prepared to defend this will against potential legal challenges? It could involve depositions, court appearances, and a significant time commitment." John straightened in his chair. "Paul's been my closest friend for 48 years. If his daughter wants a fight, she'll get one." Mark nodded approvingly. "Good. Now, I recommend creating a video testament explaining your reasoning in your own words. Courts find personal testimony particularly compelling when challenging claims of mental incompetence. How detailed should it be?" "Extremely detailed. Explain the specific incidents, your emotional response, and the impact on family relationships." Mark made additional notes. "We'll film it here next week with Linda as a witness." I withdrew my current will and showed Mark the green ink crossouts. "How quickly can we finalize the changes?" 2 weeks for complete documentation, including the video component." Mark examined my markings. I'll also recommend establishing that separate trust fund for your grandchildren, accessible at 25 with respect conditions. What kind of conditions? Written letters of understanding regarding family obligations, annual community service requirements, demonstrable financial responsibility. Mark's pen moved steadily across his pad. Essentially, they'll earn their inheritance through character development. John smiled grimly. That's beautifully designed. The children get security, but only if they don't follow their mother's example. Mark gathered the evidence materials into organized stacks. Paul, I'll draft preliminary documents by Friday. Review them carefully. Then we'll schedule the video testament for early next week. And if Caitlin challenges the will, these photographs and text messages create powerful evidence of her true character, Mark replied. Combined with your systematic documentation and video explanation, any challenge becomes very difficult to sustain. As we prepare to leave, Mark's expression grew more serious. One final point, avoid any direct confrontation with your daughter during this process. If she approaches you seeking reconciliation, document everything, but don't engage emotionally. Actually, I said, I hope she does approach me. It would provide additional evidence of her manipulative patterns. Mark studied my face carefully. Just remember, everything you say or do from this point forward could become courtroom evidence. Stay methodical, stay documented, stay controlled. In the elevator descending towards street level, John chuckled with dark satisfaction. Your daughter has no idea what's coming. She will soon enough. I check my watch. 4:30 p.m. Drive home with me, John. I want to show you something in my study. Outside, Boston's winter afternoon was already darkening toward evening, but for the first time in years, I felt completely energized. The pieces were falling into place with engineering precision. My phone rang as we reached the parking garage. Caitlin's number. I showed John the display, then answered with deliberate calm. Hello, Caitlin. Dad, I'm so glad you answered. Andrew and I have been talking, and we really think we should meet in person to work things out properly. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. That might be possible, I replied, catching John's knowing look. When were you thinking? Could we come by tomorrow evening? Maybe around 6 o'clock. I want to explain everything properly without all the holiday stress. 6 o'clock tomorrow works fine. I ended the call and turned to John with calculated satisfaction. She's coming directly into the trap. Recording device already prepared. I felt the weight of strategic advantage settling around me like armor. By tomorrow night, I'll have everything I need to make her disinheritance absolutely unchallengeable. The morning after New Year's Day found me in my study replaying Caitlin's recorded apology for the third time. Her emphasis on financial security for the grandchildren had been too deliberate, too calculated. Something nagged at my engineer's mind, a pattern I couldn't quite identify. I pulled up my online banking, methodically reviewing recent transactions. Normal pension deposits, utility payments, grocery purchases. But buried in December statements, I noticed something odd. Login notifications from devices I didn't recognize at times when I'd been sleeping. John, it's Paul. I dialed my friend's number while staring at the suspicious activity. Can you meet me at First National this morning? I need to check something, and I'd prefer a witness. Of course. What's wrong? Maybe nothing. Maybe everything. I'll explain when you get there. An hour later, we sat across from Robert Mason, the branch manager who'd handled my accounts for 15 years. His usually cheerful demeanor grew serious as he pulled up my financial records. Paul, I need to show you something that's been concerning me. Robert turned his monitor toward us. This credit line was established with your personal guarantee 2 years ago. I stared at the document on the screen. $25,000 secured against my home equity with monthly payments automatically deducted from my checking account. My signature appeared at the bottom, except it wasn't my signature. I never signed this document. My voice remained steady, but John leaned forward, studying the screen intently. Robert pulled out a magnifying glass, comparing the signature to my actual signature on file. You're absolutely right. Look at the P in Paul. Your real signature has a distinctive loop here. This one doesn't. John whistled softly. She forged your name for $25,000. Apparently so. I photographed the document with my phone, making sure the timestamp was visible. Robert, what's the process for reporting this fraud? I'll need to file a formal report immediately. This document will be flagged, and we'll begin investigating all recent account activity. Robert's fingers moved quickly across his keyboard. I'm also recommending we review every account where Caitlin has any access. The next 3 hours revealed the systematic scope of my daughter's deception. Joint savings accounts I'd forgotten about opened when she was 18. Credit cards where I'd been listed as a guarantor without my knowledge. Investment accounts where she'd been gradually transferring small amounts, always below the threshold that would trigger automatic notifications. The total exposure is approximately $47,000, Robert announced after reviewing everything, all linked to forged documents or unauthorized account access. I sat back in the leather chair, processing the numbers with cold calculation. $47,000 stolen through systematic fraud over nearly 3 years. No wonder she'd been so desperate to secure her inheritance. She'd been living off my credit for years. Remove her from every account immediately, I instructed. Change every password, security question, and access code. I want John Miller added as the sole, alternate contact and beneficiary on everything. Robert nodded grimly. I'll also need to report this to the police. Financial fraud of this magnitude requires a criminal investigation. Do it. I stood, gathering the printed evidence into my folder. And Robert, I want copies of every forged document, every unauthorized transaction, every suspicious login, everything. Of course, I'll have the complete package ready by tomorrow morning. Outside the bank, John shook his head in amazement. $47,000, Paul. She's been scientifically robbing you blind. The recording from her apology visit makes perfect sense now, I replied, walking toward my car. She wasn't worried about our relationship. She was worried about losing access to my accounts. My phone rang as we reached the parking lot. Mark Levon. Paul, perfect timing. How did the banking review go? Better than expected. Worse than I feared, I replied, summarizing the forgery discoveries for him while John listened from the passenger seat. We have documented proof of systematic financial fraud. Excellent. That strengthens our position considerably. Mark's voice carried professional satisfaction. Can you meet me tomorrow afternoon? I want to review everything before we finalize your new will. Absolutely. And, Mark, I think we need to discuss criminal charges as well. After hanging up, I drove home through Arlington's quiet January streets, my mind calculating the next phase of strategy. The financial fraud gave me leverage I hadn't expected, criminal exposure that could send Caitlin to prison if she chose to challenge the will. But something still bothered me about those suspicious device logins. If she'd been accessing my accounts electronically, what else might she have been monitoring? John, when we get to my house, I need to check something on my home computer. This fraud investigation might be more complicated than we realized. The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place with mathematical precision, revealing a pattern of deception far more sophisticated than a simple wine-throwing tantrum. That evening, after John had left to process the day's shocking revelations, I sat in my home office staring at suspicious email notifications. Login alerts from locations I'd never visited. At times I'd been asleep. The financial fraud was just the beginning. Someone had been scientifically monitoring my digital life. I called Alex Reed, the IT security specialist Mark had recommended for exactly these situations. Alex, this is Paul Carter. Mark Levon gave me your number. I need someone to examine my home network immediately. What type of security concerns are you experiencing, Mr. Carter? Unauthorized access to my financial accounts, suspicious login activity, and possibly more. I glanced at the old iPad sitting on my guest room desk, a device I'd barely used since purchasing it 3 years ago. Can you come tomorrow morning? Absolutely. Bring all your devices and don't touch anything until I arrive. Alex proved to be a methodical professional in his 30s, arriving with a briefcase full of diagnostic equipment. Within an hour, his laptop displayed a network map showing every device connected to my home Wi-Fi, including several I didn't recognize. Mr. Carter, someone has been systematically accessing your network from multiple devices over the past 2 years, Alex said, pointing to unauthorized connections. They've logged into your banking apps, email accounts, and even your medical records portal. From where? Let me trace the device signatures. This is interesting. Most of the access is coming from a device physically located in your house. My blood chilled. Show me. Alex led me to the guest room, straight to the iPad I'd forgotten about. He powered it on, revealing a screen filled with my personal applications, banking, email, insurance, investment accounts, all logged in, all accessible, all monitored. Someone configured this device to mirror your accounts and maintain constant access, Alex explained, scrolling through the activity logs. They've been watching your financial activity, reading your emails, even monitoring your medical appointments. This iPad has been in my guest room for 3 years. Caitlin always stayed here when she visited. Then she's had complete surveillance capability over your private life. Alex began taking screenshots of the evidence. But there's more. Look at this. He opened the messaging app, revealing a conversation thread between Caitlin and Andrew that made my chest tighten with betrayal and fury. Caitlin, still waiting for the old man to kick the bucket? How much longer, Andrew? He's 68 with heart problems. Can't be much longer. Andrew, I've been monitoring his accounts. Still spending money like he'll live forever. Caitlin, at least we know exactly what we'll inherit when the time comes. Andrew, if he doesn't change his will first, that's why I need to stay in his good graces. Alex watched my face as I read their casual discussion of my mortality. There are dozens more messages like this, spanning 2 years. Should I document everything? Yes. Screenshot every message, every login, every unauthorized access. My voice sounded strangely calm, even to my own ears. I want a complete digital forensics report. For the next 3 hours, Alex systematically documented the scope of Caitlin's surveillance. Banking transactions monitored in real time. Emails read before I saw them. Medical records accessed to track my health status. Even my lawyer consultations with Mark had been observed through my calendar app. She knows about your will changes, Alex noted, reviewing recent activity. Your appointment confirmations with Mark Levon were all accessed from this device. Then she's preparing for a legal challenge. I sat heavily in my desk chair, processing the implications. She's been playing a much longer game than I realized. Alex finished compiling his evidence report, over 200 screenshots, access logs, and digital fingerprints proving systematic invasion of privacy. Mr. Carter, this is criminal stalking and identity theft. You need to press charges. I intend to. I gathered the printed evidence into my growing folder. But first, I need to create something that will protect my intentions if she tries to challenge them legally. A video will. Exactly. If Caitlin is watching my digital activity, she'll see me creating it. Let her know that I'm completely aware of her deception. That evening, I set my laptop camera and recorded a detailed video explanation of my decision to disinherit Caitlin completely. I spoke directly to the lens, methodically presenting each piece of evidence. The wine-throwing assault, the forged financial documents, the surveillance, and the callous messages about waiting for my death. If someone is watching this video, it means Caitlin has challenged my will post-mortem. I concluded, every decision I've made has been deliberate, documented, and legally sound. She has shown her true character repeatedly, and I've responded accordingly. After uploading the video to secure cloud storage and sending copies to Mark, I called Alex back to implement comprehensive digital security measures. From now on, all my devices require two-factor authentication, encrypted communications, and regular security audits, I instructed. I want my digital life completely protected from further surveillance. As Alex finished securing my network, I felt the satisfaction of closing another avenue of Caitlin's deception. She'd been watching me for years, waiting for me to die naturally while systematically stealing from me financially. Now she would discover that her surveillance had provided me with the evidence needed to ensure she received exactly what she deserved. Nothing. My phone buzzed with a text from Mark. Restraining order paperwork ready. Can you meet at courthouse Thursday morning? Perfect timing. The legal protection phase could begin. A February afternoon, sunlight streamed through my study window as I sorted through thank you letters from people who'd attended my elder abuse prevention talks. The community response had been overwhelming. Car doors slammed outside with unusual violence. Through the window, I watched Caitlin emerge from her SUV, her face twisted with desperate fury. She yanked something from her trunk, a handmade poster board sign crudely lettered in red marker. My phone was already in my hand, recording as she positioned herself on the sidewalk directly in front of my house. The sign read, "My father betrayed his family. People look." Caitlin's voice cracked as she shouted toward neighboring houses. This man cut off his own grandchildren from their inheritance. Paul Carter is a heartless father. Curtains moved in windows. Front doors opened cautiously. Mrs. Wilson appeared on her porch, phone already recording. Other neighbors emerged, drawn by the commotion but maintaining a careful distance. I remained inside, methodically filming through the window while dialing the police. "This is Paul Carter at 247 Maple Street. My daughter is violating her restraining order by approaching my property. Officers are en route, Mr. Carter. Stay inside and document everything." Caitlin paced the sidewalk like a caged animal holding her sign high. "He has $500,000, and he won't give his grandchildren a penny. What kind of grandfather abandons innocent children?" Caitlin Smith. Mrs. Wilson called from her porch. "We read about you in the newspaper. The financial fraud charges." "Lies." Caitlin whirled toward her. "He's manipulating the media. I made one mistake at Christmas, and now he's destroyed our whole family." More neighbors gathered, smartphones capturing everything. The Wilsons' teenage son live-streamed on social media. By now, dozens of people were witnessing Caitlin's public meltdown in real time. To Arlington, police cruisers arrived with lights flashing. Officers approached Caitlin with professional calm while I met them at my front door with a copy of the restraining order. "Here's the legal documentation," I told Officer Martinez, handing him the paperwork. "She's prohibited from approaching within 500 feet. Ma'am, you need to step away from this property immediately," Officer Martinez called to Caitlin. "This is my father," she screamed, brandishing her sign. "I have a right to see my own father." "Actually, you don't." Officer Martinez approached her steadily. "You're in violation of a legal restraining order. Put the sign down and place your hands behind your back. This is insane. Dad, stop this madness. I'm your daughter." I stepped onto my front porch, maintaining the safe distance required by law, and met her eyes directly. "My daughter died the night she threw wine in my face. You're just someone who happens to share my DNA." The handcuffs clicked shut around Caitlin's wrists. Her sign fell to the pavement, crumpled and forgotten. As officers guided her toward the patrol car, she twisted around for one final appeal. "Dad, please think about Emma and Jake. They love their grandfather. Emma and Jake will have education funds when they turn 25, I replied calmly. "If they learn to show respect and gratitude, qualities their mother never possessed." The police car pulled away, carrying Caitlin toward processing and booking. Neighbors began dispersing, but several approached me with expressions of support. "Paul, we saw your interview in the Herald," Mrs. Wilson said, walking up my driveway. "That poor woman doesn't realize how much damage she's done to her own case." "It's sad, really," I replied, watching the patrol car disappear. "But some people never learn that actions have consequences." As the crowd dispersed, I returned to my study and reviewed the phone footage I'd captured. 47 minutes of Caitlin violating her restraining order, making public accusations, and demonstrating exactly the kind of unstable behavior that had led to her legal troubles in the first place. Mark would be very interested in this latest evidence. The court date was approaching, and Caitlin had just provided the final piece of documentation needed to ensure my victory was complete and permanent. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Dad, they're saying I'll face criminal charges now. Can we please talk before this gets worse?" Too late for that conversation. Far too late. 1 week after Caitlin's arrest, I sat across from Mark in his downtown Boston office, watching him arrange the most comprehensive legal evidence package I'd ever seen. Documents filled 3 bankers' boxes, financial fraud proof, digital surveillance records, restraining order violation videos, and witness statements from neighbors, bank officials, and IT specialists. Paul, in 30 years of family law, I've never seen a case this thoroughly documented, Mark observed, spreading key exhibits across his conference table. "Your engineering background shows in every detail. Methodical preparation prevents poor performance," I replied, studying the evidence array. "When do we present this to the judge?" "Both hearings are scheduled for next week. The criminal case for the restraining order violation and the civil challenge to your will. Judge Thompson will review everything comprehensively." The courthouse corridors buzzed with activity as we arrived for the combined hearings. Mark wheeled 2 suitcases of evidence while I carried my video testimony equipment. Local media had gathered, attracted by the elder abuse angle that had made my story regionally significant. Inside the courtroom, Caitlin sat beside her court-appointed attorney, looking diminished and desperate. She avoided eye contact, staring instead at the table where her lawyer shuffled through a pitifully thin file of defensive arguments. "Your Honor," Mark began his presentation, "we have systematic evidence of elder abuse spanning multiple years, escalating from emotional manipulation to financial fraud to invasion of privacy." Judge Thompson, a stern woman in her 60s, examined the first exhibit. Enlarged photographs of the forged signatures alongside my authentic ones. "The handwriting analysis is quite clear. These signatures don't match." "Correct, Your Honor. Bank security footage shows the defendant obtaining credit using fraudulent documents, resulting in $47,000 in unauthorized debt against my client's assets. The digital evidence proved even more damaging." Alex Reed clarified via video link, explaining how Caitlin had maintained systematic surveillance of my private accounts, email, and medical records for over 2 years. She accessed his banking applications daily. Alex reported his technical expertise lending credibility to every statement. We recovered private messages where she discussed waiting for his natural death while monitoring his financial activity. Those messages, displayed on the courtroom's large screen, created visible discomfort among observers. Caitlin's casual discussion of my mortality, her impatience with my continued health, her cynical calculations about inheritance timing, all preserved in damning detail. "Your Honor," Caitlin's lawyer attempted damage control. "My client was grieving her mother's death and under extreme financial stress." "Financial stress caused by systematic fraud against her own father," Mark interrupted smoothly. "Stress she created through her own criminal behavior." John confirmed our 48-year friendship, describing my character transformation from a grieving widower to a confident advocate. His emotional testimony about witnessing the wine-throwing incident provided powerful context for my subsequent decisions. "Paul became a different man after that Christmas Eve," John explained, "not bitter but determined, focused on protecting himself and helping other elderly people facing similar manipulation." The final piece of evidence was my video will, filmed in Mark's office with professional lighting and sound. Judge Thompson watched intently as I methodically explained each decision, referenced specific incidents, and demonstrated my complete mental competence. "If someone is viewing this recording, it means my daughter has challenged my will posthumously," my recorded voice stated calmly. "Every decision documented here was made deliberately with legal counsel and based on substantial evidence of her systematic abuse and financial exploitation." Caitlin's lawyer made one final attempt. "Your Honor, families have conflicts. This seems like an extreme response to a single evening of emotional outburst. Counselor, Judge Thompson interrupted suddenly. The evidence shows systematic financial fraud, privacy invasion, and ongoing manipulation spanning years. This is not a family conflict. This is elder abuse. The verdicts came quickly. A criminal conviction for the restraining order violation resulted in community service and extended protection orders. There was complete validation of my new will, with all challenges dismissed. Legal fees were awarded to my side, further devastating Caitlin's financial position. Outside the courthouse, media representatives requested statements about my victory and its implications for elder abuse prevention. Justice has prevailed, I told the cameras, standing confidently beside Mark on the courthouse steps. My grandchildren will receive educational support when they turn 25, but only if they demonstrate the respect and gratitude their mother never learned. Real family is built on love and respect, not genetic obligation. As I drove home through Arlington's familiar streets, I felt something I hadn't experienced in over a year: complete peace. The methodical campaign that began with documenting wine stains had culminated in total victory, legal validation, and community support. Christmas was 3 weeks away. It was time to plan a worthy celebration of my new chosen family. It was Christmas Eve morning, 2024. Exactly 1 year since Caitlin threw wine in my face. I stood in the same kitchen preparing Christmas dinner with genuine joy instead of desperate hope. The guest list had changed dramatically. John and his new girlfriend Ruth, Alex Reed with his wife Sarah and their 6-year-old son Tommy, Aunt Mary, the Wilson neighbors, and Detective Morrison, who'd become a friend during the fraud investigation. I set the dining room table with care, placing a manila envelope at each person's place setting. Inside each envelope was a copy of my final will, explained in simple terms, showing how respect and loyalty had earned their shares in my estate. Uncle Paul. Tommy burst through the front door ahead of his parents, his energy filling the house with the sound I'd missed most: children's laughter without fear or tension. Tommy, my engineer in training, I replied, kneeling to his level. Did you bring the blueprint we discussed? He proudly displayed a crayon drawing of a rocket ship, complete with detailed specifications only a 6-year-old could imagine. This is the engine that runs on Christmas cookies. See? Brilliant design. We'll build a prototype after dinner. As guests arrived, the house transformed into something Margaret would have loved, a home filled with people who chose to be here, who valued relationships over inheritance expectations. John carved the turkey while Ruth arranged flowers. Sarah helped with side dishes, while Alex tested the wine I'd selected with actual expertise instead of marketing preference. At 7 p.m., we gathered around the same table where my family had imploded 12 months earlier. The contrast felt profound but not forced, genuine happiness replacing desperate wishful thinking. Before we eat, I announced, standing at the head of the table, I want to explain these envelopes. Last Christmas, I learned that DNA doesn't create family. Love, respect, and mutual support, that's what makes people family. Tommy opened his envelope first, reading aloud with 6-year-old determination. Tommy Reed will receive Uncle Paul's engineering books and workshop tools when he turns 18 if he continues being curious and kind. Laughter rippled around the table as others discovered their bequests. John inheriting the house and primary estate management, Alex receiving technology assets and educational funds for Tommy, the Wilsons getting Margaret's garden and greenhouse, Aunt Mary receiving family photographs and heirlooms. This is beautiful, Paul, Ruth whispered, studying her document. You've created family through choice rather than genetics. Margaret always said families grow through love, not just biology. I replied, raising my wine glass in the same spot where Caitlin's assault had begun this journey to real family. To the people who choose to love us for who we are, not what we can provide. 8 glasses rose in a unanimous toast. Tommy clinked his apple juice against my wine with ceremonial seriousness. During dinner, conversation flowed naturally between updates on the elder abuse support group I'd started, Tommy's school projects, John and Ruth's travel plans, and Alex's latest security consulting success. No one mentioned Caitlin or the legal battles. That chapter had closed completely. After dessert, I stepped outside into the crisp December night. Stars shone clearly above Arlington, and Christmas lights twinkled in neighbors' windows. The transformation felt complete, but not finished, an ending that was simultaneously a beginning. 1 year ago, wine had dried on my shirt while I planned methodical revenge. Tonight, laughter echoed from my dining room, while people I loved truly celebrated together. Margaret's presence felt strong in the winter air, not as a memory, but as approval. I'd learned her most important lesson. Real families are built through daily choices to love, respect, and support each other. Blood might provide the starting point, but character determines the destination. Uncle Paul, come see our rockets. Tommy's voice called from inside. It's got cookie fuel and everything. I smiled up at the stars one final time, then returned to my house, my home, where my chosen family waited with engineering blueprints drawn in crayon and hearts full of the only inheritance that truly mattered: love freely given and gratefully received. The grandfather clock chimed 9, marking not an ending, but a new beginning, filled with possibilities as endless as Tommy's imagination, and as solid as the friendship that had sustained me through the darkest year of my life. Real family had found me at last. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the right.